write the book, but I think this is what type of things you want to talk, right? Like you cannot explain every little detail nuance of the field, right? So we use this meetup for people that already read the book, right? This is the extras beyond the book. So instrumentation. So this is something that the project we're going to talk about Otel specifically, right?
Yes,
So this is
yes.
something that the project, I see this as a separate concern, right? You could ideally have a different project called instrumentation SDK, open instrumentation SDK, right? It doesn't have to be like Auto is doing its work already. So just dealing with the collection, right? And that aspect, there's amount of community effort to do that, right? That
Exactly.
if another project wants to do the for every language out there, like they want to invest in that, they can do it. But if they led to the community, say, oh, that's user space, or another company to do it, and that is not good, like excellent, the instrumentation SDK for every language, the coverage, then the all the work that Otel did on collector doesn't get the benefits, if that makes sense. So I think this is the reason why the Otel said, like, to be sure for the project to be successful, we also have to cover the application layer. We have to, because those are the majority of the users, not going to be the platform engineers. They're going to be more developers than platform engineers, right? In terms of people working with this. So I was surprised that that's something when Otel started back then, they included this SDK, because I think before Otel, I think there was, when I was working in this space, there were like vendor instrumentation, there were open source instrumentation, like there were instrumentations everywhere depending which language you were writing, Swift or C or Rust or Fortran. Like you needed to go to that community to say, like, how do I implement this in open census? Do you have the Prometheus Fortran library, right? Or C library. So now it's in one place to find. Is that a good summary of where this landed in here?
That's a perfect summary. Absolutely. This is an important, like I placed it right in the middle of the, your if you're starting your journey from chapter one, this is right in the middle. It's kind of a segue to the complex topics, right? Like before this particular chapter, we saw what is the challenge, or what observability solves, especially in Kubernetes realm. And then what are some of the signals that you could leverage? What are the tools that you could use for those signals? And how do you correlate these? Right. And exactly at that juncture, you have OpenTelemetry, which helps in the correlation part. And when it comes to correlation, instrumentation is going to be key, because the moment you introduce some kind of a metadata into your spans, your correlation becomes very easy. So we start with. Oh yeah. Do you all hear a lot of noise?
Just
Give
just
me
a
one
little bit.
second. I can come to a different place. Give me 1 second.
Okay, we can second. I think it's going to see if I can find a room. He's in a remote location, not the typical place. Like his. Any question from the folks? I think we're going to be talking about I call it business metrics. Like actually, he took the credit card one. I don't know if he saw it in another blog post, but I remember, like, I don't know. This was 10 years. 10 years ago, I was dealing this space about this type of metrics, and then this was the canonical example. I don't know if that's still the canonical example of like the credit card uh, for keeping track of that. Oh no, this is the description of the application, on what to the roll dice. I think he's going to do the roll dice. I remember that I was doing
Folks,
an app that it was a payment service, and this was a real customer payment service of like wanted to know which real time what credit card was being used. But this application is about roll dice, right?
yeah. So is it any better? Is
Yeah, much
my
better.
Okay, awesome. So this sample application that I've taken has like three, four paths, like APIs. One is the outgoing HTTP call. That's another API. That simply, when you hit that endpoint, it takes you to aws.amazon.com, like documentation page. And then there is this credit card. So when the idea for that API endpoint is like whenever you hit that credit card, excuse me, it deploys a, like it creates a span. So just to simulate the traces, right? So I kept that API. It's a simple API. It just generates a span. That's it. And then the outgoing sample app just redirects you to a external facing application, like a sample application. And finally, the roll dice component. Roll dice, like every time you hit that endpoint, you're gonna see ones, twos, threes, like what
And the
between
credit card is for like simulating a bank transaction of
exactly,
like it went through many mainframe, it went through back
exactly,
end, front end, so you can have a whole transaction with this credit card payment. All right, that would be the unique ID maybe. As it
correct.
could be something, but for simplistic reason, right? You just took the credit card and then
Yeah,
try
just
to find it in the haystack.
exactly. The idea is to can I mask this confidential information? Can I apply some kind of
Oh,
rules within hotel collector to skip that
oh, okay. So
the
PI,
PII
so more
data?
of a PII masking.
Exactly.
So Otel, okay, that's something I'm going to learn. Otel can handle that. I used to
Yeah,
handle it in
yeah.
libraries actually.
If you go to the bottom, like in the subsequent pages, there is a section where I kind of
Okay.
show you how to do
So
that.
this is just explaining like what are the things that will be the app, right? So I think you mentioned it last week about the rollout
Mhm.
a rollout example. Um,
Exactly. So if you look at the code right there on line 16, 17, 18,
and
the
this is
meter dot create is an API of OpenTelemetry. What I'm doing literally is just emitting that signal. So every time you roll a one, you roll a two, the counter is gonna keep incrementing. So end of the day, you may want to see like how many six I rolled today, or how many fours I rolled today. So it is that I think it's on the next page, maybe Carlos. If you can go to the next page, the next page. Uh, you were showing a sample code
yeah,
sometime
this
back.
is the code at the bottom. You don't see it?
No, not the code.
What do you see?
I see till definition roll dice, line 4, or
Oh,
maybe it's
let
just
me
me.
see because I wanted to show this bigger. Give me one
I
second.
see, I see.
I Let me stop sharing and share again to refresh. Let me see if no, right? You don't see it. It's too big for you to see.
Still, yeah.
It gets cut off.
But the previous.
We'll go with two. We'll go to two sides.
Okay,
Let me stop again. Share again. Sorry.
notice.
Okay, better now.
Yeah, can you go to the, yeah, yep, perfect. This is better. So yeah, the if you pay attention to the line 16, 17, 18, it's literally creating a counter, and this is manual instrumentation, folks. This is something that I've introduced in my code, which literally increments every time you roll a particular number. The counter is gonna increment, right? So just for everyone's awareness, counter only can go up. There are like different types of metrics we discussed in the earlier chapters, and here we are using counter as one of those metrics. And and
Yeah, it's a
if
good
you
tool
go to
too.
the,
If you're new, it's something that you learn like when you start like chat GPT question like what is the difference between a counter and a gauge?
yeah,
So counter is
exactly,
something that for the life of this application continues to go up, right? A
yeah.
gauge is something that can go up and down.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. So if you look at line 8, 9, 10, that's the trace instrumentation, folks. Tracer is another API within OpenTelemetry. So what I'm doing there is I'm enabling Tracer, and every time you call this function roll dice, it's going to start this. And let's say the roll dice communicates with 10 different APIs. The so-called span is going to propagate across those communication, and when you finally correlate this, that's where your mean time to identify and resolve any issues considerably get reduced.
So I would say this is I would not call it manual instrumentation. I would say this is just normal instrumentation. It just happens that there's auto instrumentation that cannot do this because norm doesn't know about your business logic, what you want to
Exactly.
track, right? The auto is for things that can be done in the framework that you're using about the external things, HTTP comes out, capturing
Mhm.
errors, things like that. But this one is like some business metric that you want to keep track, right? Or traces at the point of something that you want to keep a trace. Um, and then one example, I think maybe you have it. Maybe you can answer it now. If I'm connecting to a database, I'm connecting to a database, um, and I'm getting information back. Maybe this is a real scenario that I had, like maybe how it can be done in 2025. I remember doing instrumentation for tracing to figure out what was slow in the application. The application was very simple. A backend application, I think it was maybe JavaScript or TypeScript, connected to a cloud and database or a database. And the team was not sure if was the logic of the application doing things that was slow or the database. Well, at that time, they didn't know it was a database. So me as an SRE person came in and said, like, I teach them. I didn't know anything about the application, so I can I was the SRE, so I just knew Jaeger. They're like, well, if you put this is how you use Jaeger, and start creating spans in different places in your application, and put one of like measuring how long does the database takes to return back you the result that you want. And at that time, it took a long time, um, but then they were able to pinpoint that was the provider of that database was not performing, was not the application. Is that a fair use of tracing, or there's a better way of doing it today?
That's a you kind of nailed it, right? So especially when you're having a microservices based architecture where you don't see visibility into where the communication takes you, that's exactly where traces can be helpful. And even within a simple application, if you want to, we talked about red metrics, saturation, usage, utilization, error rates, right? Especially even within a single application, if you want to see like what was my request duration like, right? Like over a period of time. So it is to understand what's happening within your application and the overall stack as well. To your point, wherever the smoking gun is, if you're someone who's interested in like getting to know the root
And
cause of the problem. Yeah,
and this is inefficient. I say, yeah, I would say this was a solution and inefficient because the database that they were collecting wasn't their database. It was a vendor,
right.
and the vendor didn't provide back of like metrics about how that instance of the database was behaving or anything. That's what I remember. And the vendor was not AWS, by the way, just sure, was another vendor of databases. But recently, I was talking to folks from RDS and Postgres, and that they were writing some agents and these agentic AI MCP servers and all that. And they told me that they can, if you have access to the database, then it's better to go through the database on how it's performing. So it will tell you like what type of queries are the ones that are taking the longest. So based on the recent metrics collected inside Postgres, right? I think it's PG stats. I think I'm not a database person. I'm a Kubernetes person. PG stats will give you the recent stuff, and it will give you the analysis of like these are the recent calls that was low. So if you had that back then, right, I could have pinpoint like is the database working or not working, and if it was working, then continue finding like what's the bug in the
Yeah,
application.
even if you have not instrumented your databases, if you cannot collect the signals, the application that is connecting to the database, if you look at the request duration of that particular application, it might it might have a steep increase, which makes sense that whatever it's trying to do in the backend might be the reason why this application is taking long time to serve the request. So that's where traces are really handy.
Yeah, and it's a shame because it's the last one that people implement. Like you have logs, of course we have logs. You have metrics. We just got metrics this year. You have traces. What is that?
Yeah.
Usually, it's the last one of and maybe it's the reason because you have to go into the code and instrument these type of things. Okay. So yeah, this is a snippet of code of like, I think, right, for a developer to get started, it looks simple in terms of like getting an object and then calling a method on that
Mhm.
object for metrics and traces. So you did it at the beginning of this chapter, showed
Right.
you what should be a minimum thing. How does it look like? Frameworks. Let's talk about frameworks.
So frameworks, like I said, OpenTelemetry is a standardized way to instrument your applications. And what we've discussed here is how OpenTelemetry has a wide, like a diverse set of SDKs, APIs available, irrespective of the language that you use to develop your application.
And all of
So,
them on par. Like, is one better support of instrument of open telemetry than others, or like pretty
like
much all of them are the
if you're coming
same?
from a minimalistic, signals that you would want to instrument, like for example meters, tracers, I think it's available for all the languages. And if you go like, again, depends. Mostly you have all the meters available within the SDKs. But if you think like something's not available for your language, like I said, the community is really active and it's open source. You can even contribute to the open telemetry community.
Yeah, but you have to go as a company or organization, right? It's kind of hard to add something like this
Mhm.
unless you're passionate. Rust, I don't see Rust here. It's just Rust
Rush might
SDK.
be there. I just went with the, some of the
I don't
things.
think this is extensive. That's what I was trying to like.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
went
It's
I
like
went
a
the other day and I saw it.
hand
This is
selected, hand
a short
handpicked,
list
handpicked.
because I think there's also within these languages there's frameworks
Yes,
like the nerd JavaScript, right? Types React or TypeScript versus Node.js or Express.js, like depending which web framework.
right.
Sometimes you even they have support for web frameworks. Same thing
Right.
for Python, like the Django and Fast API. Um, so let's move to sampling. Um,
Yep.
this sampling, when we talk about sampling, is always about tracing, or not necessarily.
Mostly tracing, because that's where we might want to implement something like a sampling, because a single click becomes a trace. And when you traverse across all of these microservices, which might be like hundreds or even thousands, then that's going to result in a huge number of traces, and you don't want to collect and store all of these. That's why I spend some time. I mean, yeah, if you think of sampling, mostly it's for traces. You're right.
Okay. So I don't know if you cover the sampling or error.
Yeah, I covered what are the different
Okay.
types of sampling: head sampling and tail sampling. Head sampling is like, you don't know what you would want to sample, but just want to reduce the amount of traces you collect. It's like out of the box. You apply head sampling, and we just sample. We don't consider if it's a
Percentage.
200 or a 500. It just exactly percentage, like 50% of my traces. Just sample them. Period.
So guessing that 20% of the sampling I'll have useful information,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And tail sampling is where you can sample based on some criteria. For example, the piece of code that you see here uses a tail sampling, and the policies that you see uses an and operator, which means that I would want to sample the error and the unset status codes with a sampling percentage of 20. I would want to just sample a little bit of my errors, and then so that way I have all my informations related to 4xx 5xx, right? So that is exactly what we are doing here using tail sampling.
Oh, so okay. So let's go back to health sampling. So this is the health sampling saying for 10 seconds,
Mhm.
sample no more than 2000.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Why? And that's okay. Interesting. Interesting. And then
It's
the
like
tells,
batching, kind of.
yeah,
You batch the
batching.
traces.
Um, because it's the window that you do in like the math of the what you want to do. So the tail sampling is the application will actually send the trace, right? The application will send the trace, and then the collector, the Docker container of the collector will do the work of saying drop it or not drop it. Is that
Exactly.
correct? That's
Yep.
what this is
Yep.
about.
Right.
So if it has this thing, don't drop it, right? So it's
Like
going to
drop it,
parse.
but
It's going to
to
parse
twenty
the.
percentage exactly. So see, there are two conditions there. If you look at the
Oh,
first one, it's called error policy. No, the line 16, it says the error policy is the name of the policy, and I filter it by status codes. All my trace will have the status codes in the trace information, and I'm saying like pick up all the errors and unsets, and then do a probabilistic sampling on it for like 20%. So this and this,
okay. So from all the errors and onsets, just pick
just do a
20%,
20% sampling.
20% of it.
Period. Yeah, that's
But
exactly what it is.
the thing that I wanted to say is the open collector is spinning wheels, right? It's burning CPU and
Right,
memory
right.
to do inspection of reading
Yes,
that trace, right? So it's opening the trace, And in the trace, it's a standard place that this information is
Yeah,
encoded, like how the OpenTelemetry knows, like, because a trace doesn't dictate that it
because
needs to
I've
be
already
HTTP
instrumented this
or error,
information.
or it's convention.
No, no, the application is already has been instrumented to emit these things. This is where
With Otel.
instrumentation exactly.
So that's the
Otel.
contract I was saying at the beginning. Maybe that was my run at the beginning of the call, right? If you
Okay,
have these two things in the same project, the likelihood that the client and the
and the
receiver, the
collector.
server, would like be in sync. Like when you put the
Yes,
status codes here, I'm going to read it here, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. And group by trace is another powerful processor within Otel. If you know that your application maximum trace can be like 500, I cannot go beyond that. You could always use this group by to have the number of traces to only that number. So in some weird scenarios, if you see like a lot of traces are
Which group
emitting,
by is it?
it's line number 6, you see there, group by trace. That's another processor that you can add. You can
Oh, okay,
basically
okay.
limit the number of traces you may want to collect on top of probabilistic sampling, because the overall transaction within your application can only be like thousands. It cannot go beyond that. Then I will be like, whatever useful information I need is within this 1,000 transactions, so let me just limit the number of traces to just 1,000.
I
And then
see.
if you want to apply probabilistic, it's a layered approach, right? If you want to apply sampling on top of that and collect only the error signals and things like that, you save
So I can apply probably like this schema. I can put it up
yep,
here. Ah, I see.
anywhere. Yep, yep.
Okay. Okay. Decision weight. What is decision weight? Decision weight. One
uh,
second.
Decision wait of 1 second, I think like it's about how much time can I wait before taking the next chunk. But
I see.
I may want to double check that. Yeah.
Okay. Let me check the chat if there's any question or any questions in the room. Jack, any of this makes sense, Jack? Or like we're talking alien speak.
No, this makes sense. I'm in learning mode.
Okay.
Vikram, I want to hear what you have to say. I mean, I have lots of opinions on this stuff, but I'm in learning mode. You're giving me a different perspective, so I'm in learning mode. Keep going. This is good.
Yeah. This is the type of the like kind of lectures, right, that we do at work as a solutions architect, right? For people that don't know this type of stuff, we sit down and then we go into their code, right? And like, well, show me an example, right? And we can talk about with an example and take an app and then instrument one thing. And if at least my perspective, right? Solutions architect or an SRE when I did it, I just had to do one, like, because they wanted to know everything. Like, how do I instrument the whole app? Like, let's do one, right? I'm going to show you how to fish. Um, so if I can
Exactly.
show you one, and we use in that case was open tracing or Jaeger or whatever. For people that don't know, they don't know what they don't know, and showing them like one example and getting it working, like all the things about modifying the app, deploying the collector, configuring this YAML for the collector, and then configuring Prometheus and Grafana and showing them a dashboard is magic to the ears if they never done this, right? This type of instrumentation. Um, so
If I could, just on what you said, Carlos, if I could interject, as a solution architect, no doubt you know that this problem has enough value that companies are hiring consultants to do the work. It's
yes.
not. It's not. It's not. Oh, I've got Prometheus and everything's good. It's like
Just
Prometheus. I have no clue. It's a high. I have no clue. You give a demonstration. You know what you're doing, and you get hired. But as a consultancy, not a
yeah.
full time. And
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
dimension of that, I've had consultants who are, sorry, customers who say, yeah, we've got a solution to the problem. We're going to use Splunk. And then we learn that they had collected so much data, they had no idea what to do with it. So they shut it all off. So I want to hear the cases you're talking about so I can learn to be even more effective.
Yeah, I think so it's like, I don't know if you go over this journey dilemma, Vikram, have you seen it? Or maybe you can have more insights. It's usually not usually what I've seen is like they don't know how to do observability or monitoring. And then they learn that they can go to the app store and search for Prometheus and say download into their thing. In the app store, they download Otel and they download Grafana and they buy these from the vendor or just from open source when they go to the App Store. It's not a real App Store, right? But that's why I think Jack was saying just download these tools and that's it,
Yeah.
right? Then comes I have to get it working. So yeah, engineers are
Yeah.
pretty smart. They will get it working. Then a little bit of more time later comes a bill back, a high
Exactly.
bill, and it costs a lot of money. And people are like, why are we spending so much time on these lines? And people are like, well, because you said you want to monitor observability. We heard that that's a good thing. And people say like, well, can we do it but at less cost? I don't know. We can like, what, can you add
Yeah,
to that?
based on my past conversation with my customer, anyone can set up observability
Yeah.
stack. It's the opinionated observability people care about, and that's exactly why we were running projects like, if there's an open source project called Observability Accelerator, the sole purpose of that project is to stand up the environment with the minimalistic configuration and making sure you only collect the signals you need. If you want like customized signals on top of that, you can go ahead and always enable that, but it gives you the utilization, just the bare minimal thing that you want to start with to start observing your applications running on Kubernetes. But yeah, that's a
Okay.
challenge.
So
Opinionated observability.
Vikram, I think it was in Salt Lake City
Mhm.
on the trade show floor. I ran across this company, really nice people. They were very, very smart. They knew how to reduce your Datadog bill. And that was their
That was the
selling point.
business solution.
Their business solution was they knew how to, because they already knew you needed Datadog,
Right.
but they knew your bill was too high.
Right.
And this was the value this company had. They took data, filtered it, and then sent it to Datadog. It was
Yep.
amazing. Vikram, I know you know all about this. To me, that was like, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, for sure. Opinionated observe. I think they know what signals you don't want really, and then just remove them and just present you with the dashboard that has all the information that you need.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Like in that case, and let's say like the company did it like this or not, but right, you're collecting 100% of all the traces, right? And it costs X amount of time. It's like, I know a solution. Instead of like you configuring the collector to trace like we see here in the screen, I'm going to put a web server. You send it there, and then I will run some logic to just filter down to 20% and send that back to where you want it, right? But these companies need to do more than that. Like they just not the filter, right? Will give you a dashboard, how much is cutting. And in this era, they're using machine learning, right, to detect which are the traces that make sense to collect. Like here, right, you're hard coding that you want error on onset. Some people may not know that they just put error here and never put onset. Like, and maybe onset is something important and you want to capture. Or maybe writes, because maybe you have a lot of writes that are going to the wrong shard of the database, right? Or from this place, you should not be doing writes because you're in a different region, right? You only should do reads. And those type of stuff is like you need to know the application well. You cannot come with as a partner or vendor just from the outside as a black box just to do the filtering, right? Or what to pick out, because you need to know more information about the application.
Yep.
I think we leave it like that, and maybe the next week we pick up. I want to see some dashboards. Where do we get to dashboards?
The dashboards is in the Grafana chapter. Visualizing, I think there is a separate chapter for visualization of signals, if I recall.
Oh, you have collections here also. So the other question is, that next week is the week that we so we schedule for just to try it out, like if people like the book or not, or the topic. We can decide if we want to add more weeks, Vikram, or not. Maybe something that I
Yeah,
can talk to you about, like
definitely we need to
privately.
touch the Gen AI chapter. There is a chapter explicitly dedicated for how we can do
And we
AI
can
ops.
jump around. We don't have to go in order.
Oh
So
yeah,
we can let's pick up 2 chapters for next week. If you want to
yeah.
pick up the dashboard,
Dashboard and AI ops.
and
Let's do
AI.
that. Mhm.
And the thing is, right, I need to talk to some other book authors to see if they could come. Or I can continue. I like the book, right? So even if you're are busy some of these Fridays, I can do it myself. But the question is to the team here. Maybe I'll put it in Slack also, like people like Jack, Safe, Vinod, and William. Like, should we continue discussing observability for a few more weeks, or shall we stop next week? Maybe you can put your vote verbally or in the chat.
Sounds good.
Because the last thing I want is to continue with a topic that people may not be interested anymore, right? Like they already read the book, or if they like this type of conversations.
Sorry, am I audible now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so just have a question around the sampling. Maybe we can take it later too. When it comes to the head and tail, would be good like if we can just marry it with a business case, one. And secondly, when I see the configuration on the tail sampling, we are giving a decision for 1 second, like how exactly it's gonna improve or help me with the performance. The case is talking more on aggressively going on the 200 responses, but as an SRE, I will be more interested on the non 200s or
Yeah.
greater than 300 responses to go deep dive in and do a lot of sampling around it to give me distributed tracing around.
Yeah. I mean, this particular example talks about the 4xx and 5xx.
Yeah,
Shrikant.
so maybe that's I also have the same question. So thank you for your question. Um, I this is error, but usually status code is 500 or 400. Like error is 500 or 400 in this case.
Error has both 4xx and 5xx, and then there are sometimes there, you have connection resets and things like that, so that gets recorded as unsets. So that's why, like, if you look at, maybe I should have added,
The
this is how
mapping,
your trace looks like, and
Okay.
then we apply this configuration, and this
yeah,
is what you're collecting.
inspecting
Maybe,
the trace and then a map.
yeah,
But
I
there needs
could
to
have
be a
added that.
mapping, right? Because
Mhm.
the trace has the word error or it has the number 500. Who's doing the mapping?
It has both the status codes. It has the error as a status code, and under that there will be like fields like within itself that says like what kind of error was it, like was it a 4xx and 5xx. So
Okay.
you can see
Become
those
my bad
really.
story. Like the text in the top got me misleading. Like when I read the text in the top, the starting it says like way has to sample 200 responses. I thought it's like status 200 responses.
Oh, no, 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 no.
Oh, this is 2000. Yeah, this is
2000,
2000. Like
2000.
2000 of the responses.
No, 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 in the text in the top. So the sampling is done in such a way as to sample
Oh, okay.
200 responses. So I was more like, okay, so what about non 200 responses?
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, it's mostly for the non 200 one. What you're seeing in the example is like the non 200 ones. That is why I'm only sampling 20% of all those traces, like errors
Uh,
and unsets. Well, that's a
Down
good
here.
point.
The 20% comes down here. So yours is 20% of the 2000.
Maybe I should have written
Oh
it
no,
as
don't
like,
not from the 2000. You're going to collect 2000 from those 2000. You are going
that's
to
a
collect
separate
only
field.
the errors on set, and then only
Correct.
from those 20%. So I
You
think the
nailed it.
200 may be a wrong math number there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I should have said like non 200 responses.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
Something
mean,
like
I thought that's the HTTPS code that you're talking about in the top.
right.
Okay.
Perfect.
And what's going to question like, but if I want to only filter on 500, can I put 500 here, or there's like error underscore
Yes,
500 or something like that?
that's a separate field. Status code, how status code is a field like that, you have the something specific for 4xx and 5xx. We need to
Group
call
them.
that
They're
up.
grouped them under error, but
Yeah,
then there's another field if
field.
error, but this flavor.
Let's say a code or whatever it is. I don't recall, but you can definitely apply filters by the codes as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, folks. I think we are at time. Thank you for everyone that joined today. Um, Follow in Slack, and then I'll hope that this recording works, and I'll put it in YouTube, and then I'll see you, Vikram, next week.